Hello everyone and welcome back into another Genshin Impact video. Before starting, I want to thank everyone who subscribed and supported my channel by liking videos and commenting and sharing. Thank you everyone so much, and of course if you're new to the channel, welcome, and remember to like and subscribe for more Genshin Impact, Warframe and other games content. And back to Genshin Impact, today we're talking about Yelan. She is basically almost gone at the time of me recording the video. Probably when I post it, the banner will be gone, but real life things are definitely taking much of my time away, so I am sorry for that, but I hope the guide will still be useful to some of you. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. Alright, Yelan. She is a 5-star bow user, she wields an Hydro Vision, and she fills the same role as Xiao. They are both an off-field Hydro damage dealer, and they basically apply a lot of Hydro, so they're mostly used in teams where basically you're using a Cryo DPS, or in Vaporized teams where you use a Pyro damage dealer like Xiao or Yuemiya. Her damage scales based on her max HP, so that's why that's the main stat I have right here. I do have a lot of HP, and attack doesn't matter at all, unless we're talking about her normal attacks, but we did not use those. And talking about normal attacks, they are basically these first consecutive shots. They look quite cool, and the charge attacks as always are kind of the same as any other bow user, but there's this particular breakthrough barb that deals damage based on your max HP. You will enter the breakthrough state after 5 seconds of you being out of combat, and this will cause your next arrow to deal AoE Hydro damage based on her max HP. As we saw at talent level 6, it deals 16.21% of my max HP, so that is actually quite a lot of damage that can also crit. And this is how our normal attacks will look like. They're this very cool combo, very fast, and this is the first attack, second attack, third attack where she kicks the bow, and the one which does a spin backward, that's the fourth attack. They do look really cool, of course, but you may have seen that I have a glowing bracelet, and that means that I am in the breakthrough state. So if I do a charge attack, as you can see, the charge time is literally none, and I do have this very weird glowing effect. This is basically the breakthrough barb, so if I shoot it, you see that it deals this AoE kind of damage, and it will refresh after 5 seconds. Since I'm not in combat, it will refresh automatically, but if you're in combat, you can only do this once, so remember that. Moving on to her elemental skill, Lingering Lifeline. This is basically one of the best skills in the game for me, especially for exploration, because it will allow you to basically run very fast around the map and also deal damage to enemies in a very cool way, I will say. Whenever you cast your elemental skill, if you tap it, it will basically do a quick dash in front of you, but nothing crazy, and deal of course the full amount of damage. While if you hold it, you can run for a quite long distance and also become more resistant to interruption, so that is nice, and also it will be harder to hit you because you're moving very fast. And all the enemies you mark will take Hydro damage based on her max HP, and it deals 36.2% of her max HP at talent level 8. The max hold duration is 3 seconds, but you can run for a very long distance, and the cooldown is only 10 seconds, so it's kinda spammable. It also gives her a lot of particles, so it's a great way to refresh your elemental burst. And additionally, for each opponent you mark and then of course explode, you have a 34% chance to reset your breakthrough arrow, and that is the only way you can refresh your breakthrough state in combat. This is how her elemental skill looks like. If I just tap it, we'll deal this dash forward, and the cooldown will start right away. It doesn't scale down, it's always 10 seconds, while if I hold it, I can move around, be very fast and speedy, and I can run like that while marking enemies. So whenever you're in combat, you can either tap it and dash to the enemy, deal damage, and of course run away. Or you can hold it, mark the enemies and run away from them, so you can dodge attacks, for example, and it will deal the same amount of damage of course, but you can also mark multiple enemies. And of course you can keep dodging their attacks, which is kinda fun. You can run away from problems very easily and still deal damage to enemies. And finally we have her elemental burst. It will deal AoE Hydro damage whenever you cast it, and afterward it will deal Hydro damage based on her max HP, and this happens either if you are normal attacking with your active character, it doesn't need to be Yelan, or if your Yelan is casting her elemental skills, and the skill damage is basically the AoE Hydro damage of the skill, while the exquisite throw is basically each subsequent shot that your dice will throw out. The duration is 15 seconds, so it lasts for a long time and the cooldown is 18 seconds, and the energy cost is 70, so it's quite high. And this is how her elemental burst looks like. You can cast it, it will deal AoE, Itto damage, and whenever you do normal attacks, you then will deal the true damage of the exquisite throw, which of course it is a lot of damage, so the poor enemy here will die soon. You can of course also trigger the exquisite throw by using your elemental skill, but usually enemies do not last that long, so keep that in mind. And back to talents, let's have a look at the passive ones. We have Turn Control. This basically will increase her max HP based on how many elemental types of characters you have in your party. So if you have 4, you'll have 30% more HP, so it is better to have a different element in your team, but if you don't or if you can't, do not worry, you will probably have at least 2 or 3, so that's 12 or 18% more HP for your Yelan. Then we have Adapt with Ease. This will increase your active character's damage whenever the exquisite throw, that is your elemental burst, deals damage to enemies. This buff can go up to 50% more damage and will of course end whenever your burst ends. And finally, her special passive talent allows you to get more rewards whenever you dispatch Yelan on a 20 hours expedition in Lua. And since the talent upgrade recommendations aren't yet available, I suggest you to upgrade your elemental burst and your elemental skill as your first priority, the burst being of course the most important one, and your normal attacks will be like a thing you can do later. Let's now have a look at how to build your Yelan. Starting with weapons, and of course we have the 5-star option, which is going to be the Aqua Simulacra. This is of course the best slot for her because it has an insane amount of crit damage. We do not care about base attacks, so this can literally be 0 and we do not care. Increases her HP by 16% and also increases your damage by 20%. And this doesn't increase your attack, it literally increases your damage, so this does still affect her elemental skill and burst and also the breakthrough barb, even though they scale off HP. Another 5-star option you can give to Yelan is gonna be the Polar Star, but only because it increases your elemental skill and elemental burst damage by 12%, and the other things about the passive do increase attack, so that's not a thing we care about, but it does give you crit rate as a substat, so that's gonna be better for your Yelan. And finally, another amazing 5-star option is gonna be the Elegy for the End. This weapon can increase your entire party damage output basically by increasing your entire party elemental mastery by 100 and your attack by 20%, while also giving you energy recharge as a substat. Moving on to 4-star options, we have the Fading Twilight. This weapon has a very high base attack, but we do not care about that. Let's give you a bunch of energy recharge while also increasing your damage output by up to 28%, and this will increase from 12% to 28% whenever you hit opponents, and that can happen even if your character is not on the field. So it was up from 12% to 20 and then 28 every 7 seconds, and whenever it's at 28% it will stay at 28% until you do not deal any more damage to enemies. Then we have the Stringless. This is another amazing bow for her. It does give her elemental mastery and also increases your elemental skill and elemental burst damage by 48%, which is actually a lot of damage. And it's a weapon that has been in the game for a long time, so probably most of you already have this one, and also does look quite cool on her. You can of course use the Sacrificial Bow or the Favonius Bow. They basically do kind of the same thing. They make your burst recharge faster because the Favonius Bow gives you a ton of energy recharge and also energy particles every 6 seconds whenever you crit, so that's gonna be amazing. And the Sacrificial Bow gives you less energy recharge but allows you to cast your elemental skill twice. So yeah, both of them very solid option, especially if you do not have any 5 stars or if you missed the Fading Twilight. Another 4-star weapon is gonna be the Moon's Moon. This weapon is gonna be alright for her because it does increase her elemental burst damage based on the combined energy capacity of your entire party and can go up to 40% as Refinement 1, so that's a lot more damage for your elemental burst. But it's an event-ish weapon that you can only get from specific weapon banners, so it is kinda hard to get it, and I do not really recommend pulling for it. Another 4-star weapon you can use is gonna be the Alley Hunter, but this is another eventish weapon you get only from specific weapon banners, so I do not recommend this one either that much, and it does increase your damage by 20% at Refinement 1, and it does work whenever you are not on the field, so it has that going on. As for craftable options, they all are terrible for Yelan, so I do not suggest you use any of those. But if you have no other choice, at this point I just suggest you to build the recurve bow, because it does increase your HP, and that's more damage for your Yelan, so there is that. You can go for this weapon, doesn't even need refinements, and it's super cheap because it's a 3-star weapon. Moving on to artifacts, you could go for a bunch of artifact sets. Of course, the Emblem of Severed Fate being the best in slot, because it does increase your elemental burst damage by a lot, while also giving you energy recharge, which is a much needed stat for Yelan. You can also use the Noblest Obliged set to give your party 20% more attack for 12 seconds whenever you cast your elemental burst, while also increasing your elemental burst damage by 20%. As for substats, I suggest you stick to HP percentage, crit rate and crit damage. And if you can, a bit of energy recharge. Keep also in mind that whenever you ascend Yelan, you get some crit rate, so try to not go crazy on crit rate. As for your sands, I suggest you go for HP. Your goblet can either be hydro damage or HP, depending on which one of your artifacts has the best stats. As for your circlet, it's either crit damage or crit rate, it depends on which weapon you're using and your other artifacts substats. So that does it for artifacts. Moving on to Constellations, I've seen them, they are not amazing, but they do increase their damage quite a lot, so you could go for them if you want, especially Constellation 1. This will give you another charge on your elemental skill. That way you can cast it 2 times in a row, and it's gonna be even better for exploration, of course, while also being great in combat, because you can refresh your Breakthrough Barb 2 more times instead of 1. Constellation 2 will increase your elemental burst damage basically by giving you another arrow that deals 14% of Yelan's max HP as hydro damage every 1.8 seconds. Constellation 3 will increase your elemental burst level by 3. Constellation 4, it's very unique and also quite cool, will increase your party's max HP by 10% for 25 seconds for every enemy you mark with Lifeline. That is like the only thing that increases your HP in the game, and this can benefit multiple characters like Xiao, Zhongli, Kokomi and many more. And the maximum increase is gonna be 40%, but 40% more HP is a lot, and as I said, it can work for multiple characters. Constellation 5 increases your elemental skill level by 3, and finally Constellation 6 is basically where Yelan could become a non-field DPS. That's because her elemental burst will also activate the Mastermind state. This will allow your normal attacks to be Breakthrough Barbs. This can happen only for 5 arrows, and the state lasts only 20 seconds. Also, these Breakthrough Barbs are not the normal ones, because they will deal 156% of our normal Breakthrough Barbs damage. I also wanted to talk about some team ideas for Yelan, and she usually is going to be your off-field DPS, as I said before, but you can of course use her as an on-field DPS if you want. Alright, first of all, what you need is an on-field DPS or a burst DPS. You do need another sub DPS or a buffer, and of course you need a healer. So all the teams are going to be something like this. In this team specifically, I'm using Yuemiya, that will be both from Kazuha and of course from Yelan's passive, as well as doing vaporize damage through her normal attacks and Yelan's burst. And then I'm using Diona because she's an amazing healer, she gives her a shield, and since she's C6, she can also buff Elemental Mastery for all the party members, and that will also increase Kazuha's buffs, Yelan's damage, and of course Yuemiya's damage thanks to Vaporize. You can swap Yuemiya for Xiao or Diluc, or even Yanfei or Klee. You can swap Kazuha out for Zhongli or Venti. And instead of Diona, you can use Bennett or Jin. Another fun team idea that I showed in my Xiao video is going to be this one, where you use Xiao as your main DPS, Zhongli to give you shields, Yelan to buff Xiao's damage through her burst, and Bennett to buff Xiao's burst even more. This way, Xiao will be dealing insane amount of damage with his plunges, and Yelan will be doing also some bit of damage thanks to her elemental burst and her elemental skill. And finally, you can use Yelan in a freeze team, where you can use Ayaka or Ganyu, but it's gonna be harder, Shenhe to buff cryo damage, and Jin to debuff enemies, so they will take more cryo damage or hydro damage, and also heal the entire party. You can use Rosaria or Diona instead of Shenhe if you don't have her, and you can of course use any other healer in the game. You can use Bennett, you can use even Barbara if you don't have anyone else, they will all work fine. Alright, that's Yelan and how to build her. I hope you guys enjoyed the guide, and I will see you at the end of the showcase.
You're talking like you think you're royalty. You think that I'm afraid, but I don't break. I heard you question my stability. You think I'll fall just like a guillotine, but I am here to stay, won't look away. The storm is coming, so you better start running. No, you can't control, feel it in my bones. I'm coming for the, coming for the. Coming for the throne. Coming for the throne. So you wanna be my enemy? You should've known I'd never kiss the rain. Ice runs in my veins, won't play it safe. I don't belong with your nobility. Who died and made you king of anything? You think that I'm insane? It's your mistake. Kingdoms rise and fall, I've come to take it all. I'll take it, I've come to take it. Kingdoms rise and fall, I've come to take it all. I'll take it all. The storm is coming, so you better start running. No, you can't control, feel it in my bones. I'm coming for the, coming for the.
Alright, and that is Yelan for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, remember to like and subscribe for more content, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.
We froze, cold night and the winter hot cold. Sorry that I fall away sometimes. Sorry that I fall away sometimes. Yeah, yeah. The end, got to end it all on the weekend. Sorry that I feel that way sometimes. Sorry that I feel that way sometimes.